Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us here on Astrology Night at Soul Food. We
The
do
first
this.
Wednesday night of every month, and at Soul Food Books in Redmond, Washington.
That's right. We've been doing this for, I don't know, about 4 years or so. For those of you who are new, the lay of the land is this. Rick and I are going to talk for 40 minutes or so about the collective astrological patterns for the month of April. Rick will be running us through the chart. You'll be seeing it from both a technical point of view, but we'll give you the interpretive lowdown on what it means. After we do that, we're going to take about a 15-minute break during which you are encouraged to patronize Soul Food. This is a free evening, and your patronage of Soul Food allows us to be here, allows Soul Food to serve the community. So please purchase.
But before you purchase, if you're interested in having your chart be one of the 3 charts that we pick to look at after the break, make sure you take a piece of paper, size does not matter, and write your birth date, place, and time on it and put it on the table behind our videographer, Julie. But do this early in the break because often people come at the end of the break, want to put their name in, and by then we've already chosen the 3 charts that we will look at. When we look at these 3 charts, we do what we call mini readings, but it's really about instruction to kind of get everybody to understand how this works, what we're talking about in the first part when it's applied to an individual chart.
All right. So, as Rick often points out, what we will be doing in these little mini readings is not an example of in-depth, personal, sensitive astrological counseling.
Wait, we're supposed to be sensitive doing this?
Not in public. But this is just to give you an example of what some true individual charts look like and give you a little overview of what working with them is like, but in a very fast-moving and hopefully playful way. So we have a new month. It's the month of April, which starts with a whole lot of activity in the sign of Aries. I'll let Rick start. He is Mr. Aries with how many? 4 or 5 planets in Aries?
Oh, at least 10 or 15.
They wander
20.
off, yeah.
Yeah.
You can't trust Aries planets to stay where you put them. But Rick is in Aries. This week is his birthday. And so tell us about Aries.
29 again. So I've been working on these one-liners for different signs and planets, and my one-liner for Aries is very simple. It's ready, fire, aim. Aries is about acting first, thinking later. Aries, as the first sign, energetically, it's the beginning of anything. It's the beginning of everything. Everything that happens has a moment that is the beginning. And in the very, very beginning, it doesn't matter whether that little green thing coming up from the ground, whether it's a tulip or an oak tree, it's just basically an impulse at that time. And Aries is about the first impulse. Now, it gets complicated once something happens, then it becomes more complicated. But at this time of year, the spring is about things springing into action. We're coming off of the month of Pisces, which is the most amorphous, the most dispersive, the most spiritual, perhaps because it's non-physical of the signs. And in Aries, there's a sense of a punch that happens. The ruling planet of Aries is Mars. Mars is the warrior planet. It's about engaging physical reality. And this first week of April, not only is the sun in Aries, but we also have Venus and Mars that are flying through Aries, Uranus, which is there for the long haul for 7 years now. And so we have a lot of energy packed up into the sign of Aries.
Thank you, Rick. One of the things that we can do in looking at any astrological pattern is to talk about the challenges and the opportunities. The challenge of Aries is acting as if there is no past and no future, because that spontaneity, that immediacy that's represented by Aries is about fully being in the present. And while from a metaphysical perspective and a consciousness perspective, there's a great deal to be learned by letting go of the past and the future, letting go of expectations, and just living in the eternal present.
Ram Dass, Aries, born the same day, different year as me, Ram Dass wrote a book, Be Here Now. It's the ultimate Aries statement. It's Buddhism in a way, and it's theoretically it sounds good, but unfortunately we can't live that way.
Well, because how it's interpreted by Aries is not necessarily be here now, it's me here now. And therein can
Busted.
sometimes lie a problem, because it really is not the purpose of Aries in pure principle, and of course we're all a mix of different astrological elements and other factors, but it is not the function of Aries to be concerned about you.
Well, and there's a reason for that, though.
Yeah,
I'm going
to
to do
know-
my
to know itself.
my
Yeah.
self-justification. One of the key words of Aries is enthusiasm. And the word enthusiasm comes from Latin and theos. Theos is God. Enthusiasm really means letting the divinity or the God channel through you. When I am feeling as if I am in my divine power, and I don't mean only me, but I mean only me because I am an Aries. When I am in my divine power, there is no separation of state and religion. There is no I and thou. I am all. And therefore, sometimes Aries has been associated like the baby of the zodiac, because it's my fingers and toes. I can amuse myself with, this is the whole, I am my whole world. And so it's a downside and an upside. The upside is that when Aries, like a Leonardo da Vinci, is in his divinity, in his enthusiasm, there's a tremendous amount of creativity. However, or Descartes, another Aries. However, when we are not, there's a tremendous amount of ego.
Well, yeah, there can be a lack of consciousness about others. But again, this can be a healthy thing, and it's a seasonally appropriate things. For example, a great way to understand a sign is to look at its opposite sign. Libra is the opposite of Aries. While Aries is the me sign of the zodiac, Libra is the you sign of the zodiac. And while Libra can be charming and graceful and delightful and sociable, it can also lose its sense of self by overly accommodating or compromising to others. So with the sun and all these planets in Aries, I encourage you to pay attention to your initial impulse, no matter how selfish or unrealistic it might be, not because you have to behave selfishly or impulsively, but because the intuition of fire, Aries is a fire sign, and the purity of it is the first sign of the zodiac, allows us in that childlike way that Rick mentioned to just discover something truthful about ourselves that's unfiltered by society and by others' expectations.
Now, until now, we've been talking about Aries as a pure energetic sign. You could do that with any, and we do that with each of the signs throughout the year. What's significant, though, is that slow-moving Uranus, 7 years in Aries now, as we've talked about here over and over again for the last year or two, and we will for the next, hopefully, year or two or three, that Uranus in Aries is moving in and out from Earth's point of view of an exact square to Pluto in Capricorn. And this is why we can't just be enthusiastic and self-concerned these days, because Pluto will not let Aries at this point in time simply get wrapped up in its own stuff, because Uranus, even though it's not exact now, I think the next exact square is coming up in June, May, June, but the Sun and Venus and Mars have all recently come across that square point to Pluto, and over this month, Mercury will move into Aries, and it will also. And what that does is it says that aside from the egocentricity of only paying attention to what I want or what I need, that there is ultimately consequences. Pluto in Capricorn, the structure of the real world, there are real and intense and powerful consequences to what I do in my self-interest.
Yeah, that is certainly true. We all know that we live in a world of gravity and a world of laws and rules and other people, and that irrespective of our own intuitive genius, we're going to run into obstacles in life. But I'm thinking about this long term, this 3 to 4 year series of squares between Uranus, which is independent and innovative, and Aries, which is both independent and innovative, to Pluto, which is controlling, in Capricorn, which is controlling. And perhaps the thing to learn now with all of these planets in Aries is about what we can create going forward rather than what we have to rebel against. That if we are overly caught up, if we project too much power outside of us, and Pluto in Capricorn in the form of giant corporations and organizations and the law can represent a powerfully repressive force. And if we sort of throw ourselves into the machine of authority, whether at work, whether in the culture, whether within our family structure, we may get chewed up by Pluto. We may pay that price. But the real beauty of Aries, not giving a crap about anything other than itself, is that it is free to blaze new paths, to create something that didn't exist before. And there's a profound difference between rebellion against something which is almost certain to evoke restriction and conflict, and an internal act of revolution that frees you to see your life and live your life differently. Now, one of the things, too, about Aries is I think we have to allow ourselves to make mistakes. It's important that we give ourselves permission to step into situations, attitudes, and positions where we don't know what the outcome is going to be, we don't have a plan, or even if we do, that we are willing to abandon it. Imagine that you are free every moment, and that in each instant of freedom, you have the opportunity to have a fresh start, and when Mercury goes into Aries as well, a fresh perspective. That's the real freedom and the gift of this zodiac starting sign.
And I think that what makes the Aries energy so interesting this year is the fact that the sun in Aries is very closely tracking in movement, in speed of movement, both Venus and Mars also in Aries, so that over the next days and even weeks, these three planets kind of come in and out of focus with each other. And I think this adds to the possible creative energy of Aries, because as the first sign of the zodiac, there is a sense of creativity. And so with Mars, Aries key or ruling planet, also in Aries, that creativity can be overpowering normally, even warmongering, over assertive or aggressive. But with Venus there, I think Venus can kind of temper it a little bit or give it a little bit more. I think you said earlier when we were talking, I think you used the word grace. It gives it a bit more grace. And what's interesting is throughout the month, these planets kind of play with in and out of each other's spaces, and then one at a time, they each move into Taurus. And as we move through the month, this will be the theme of how we take the procreative or the enterprising, the pioneering, the me first, I'm blazing new ground energy of what I create today, and how over the next month or so I stabilize it, or we all stabilize it in Taurus.
Right. Aries is a sign of the seed, which is full of potential and full of potential new life. But it has to be planted in something to sustain it, and so that it can reach its full potential, which is what earthy, grounded, fuel, resource-rich Taurus is all about. So that's part of the journey of this month, to go from that place of scattering seeds, discovering ideas, making connections, breaking connections, until we become aware of which of those enterprising actions or innovations are worthy of an investment, are worthy of planting in the earth and caring for. Because ideas are cheap and easy. Coming up with an idea, tossing it out, no expense, no risk. Engaging in that idea, investing time and energy in it, creates a very different relationship with it.
It's almost like the energy moves, from what you said, it's almost like the energy moves from excitement to determination, or from, or from the idea the breakthrough, the thought to actually giving it substance, a good Taurus word, substance.
Yeah, and Aries is a cardinal sign. It begins a season, and it begins the whole astrological year. So in many ways, it is the most cardinal initiating sign of beginnings or immediacy. And we could argue that Taurus is probably the most stable, the most fixed, the most grounded of the middle of the season signs, which are really meant to occupy space. Cardinality, and particularly Aries, enters, but it doesn't occupy. Taurus or fixed signs tend to occupy and the space they're in.
New movement, Occupy Taurus.
That's right. All right.
So we start the month with this kind of condensation of the Sun and Venus and Mars, and it's actually Venus and Mars right now that are the closest, and I think that they actually become
The 6th.
Become exact here on the 6th. You can see that Venus and Mars actually line up, and although the exact date of any planetary aspect is significant, I think it's more significant that Venus and Mars are moving so similarly, and they hold that conjunction for more than just a few days.
Yeah, and we always, Rick and I have this issue we run into all the time.
He gave
in
me the eye as I said this.
Yeah, and the various forecasts that we do. We do daily stuff, audio and video and all this different stuff. And we talk about planetary activities on the days they occur. And except for fast-moving lunar transits, almost all of these conjunctions or oppositions or significant relationships with planets, even fast-moving ones, have a duration of several days. Well, the Venus-Mars conjunction is delicious. They are the lovers in astrology. Venus is what we like. Mars is how we go out and get it. And having Venus and Mars joined together, particularly, I think, in enthusiastic Aries, is a signal to have fun, to create, to do new things, and to give yourself permission to enjoy the moment. You know, one of the things about enjoying a moment with a Venus-Mars conjunction, even though that enjoying the moment may set aside some work or other responsibilities that you have, is that it will feed you with ideas and energy that you can then later invest in more productive ways.
Yeah, and I think, again, just coming back to what I'd said earlier, that this Venus-Mars conjunction, which is exact on the 6th, has the Sun so close to it, and in just a few days gets another boost from the new moon. Maybe I'm jumping too far ahead because...
I think that's a good place to go.
Well, then...
Aries is jumpy.
Here we go.
It is jumping. There's a certain discontinuity. And although it annoys me a lot in life when people I know are discontinuous
like
in
me.
Conversations, when they jump laterally, there is something that's liberating about it. Why do we need to maintain a constant order of communication, of socialization? We need it when we don't know where we are. But when we're in Aries, who cares where we are?
Well, I think, again, I don't want to fall into this. I want to justify being in Aries position too much tonight.
Because it's unjustifiable, quite frankly.
But
when
I'm
you
going
get
to
down to it.
But I'm going to do it anyhow because it's what I care about.
Yeah, but a
not
real
about what
Aries
he
wouldn't
cares
have to
about.
justify anything.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm not a real Aries. But the fact is that there is something in quantum physics that has to do with this instantaneity of moving from one space to another. And although it might be more applicable at the level of the microcosmic subatomic particles, there is something about what you're saying that an Aries or the Aries energy doesn't do transitions.
No,
It's basically here and boom, now it's here.
It's particle, not wave.
Wave.
An Aries wave.
An Aries
Very
particle
unusual.
waving.
Yeah.
Okay, can you have a wave particling? Anyhow, we jumped with a silly transition to the Aries new moon on April 10th. And this new moon is an incredibly important new moon. All new moons are important. They're seeds. They're the beginning of a repetitive 30-day or 28-day cycle. And yet a new moon in Aries is kind of like a double whammy, because Aries is the beginning of a yearly cycle, and the new moon is the beginning of a monthly cycle, and this one has it in spades or diamonds or hearts. Hearts. It has it in hearts.
In hearts, because the heart planet, Venus, is involved and Mars is involved. So we talked, while we have the exact conjunction of Venus and Mars on April 6th, Rick's birthday, 4 days later, they're still pretty close together and connected to the new moon. And if the new moon really sets the tone for the next lunar month, the next 28 days or so, this one is about new clothes, new friends, new music, new art, new sources of fun. I mean, it's really enriched, I think, by that Venus-Mars conjunction. And it seems particularly sweet in comparison to the full moon, which we'll get to later on.
Yeah, as you were talking, what came into my mind was Bob Dylan's the movie Don't Look Back. And there's something about all these planets in Aries that is forward-looking, forward-seeking, impulsive. It's like being shot out of a cannon. And the bullet, or the bullet that is shot at a projectiled out of a cannon or a rifle, is not looking back. It's one way. It's shooting forward. And I think that this energy really has that kind of...
Very much so. And the reason is every sign is a reaction or response to the sign before it. It can be looked at in a constructive way or in a neurotic way. But the sign prior to